Hello everyone, Mike Levin, June 12th, 2022, Sunday. I will start out with a pronunciation correction. Robert Cialdini. Just checked it on YouTube, on actually Google. I just used Robert Cialdini pronunciation and read it to me. And so I have a long-standing correction to make there. I must have been pronouncing it wrong for years. And he has an important message for you, for all of us. He studied what marketers do to virtually control our minds. Not all our decisions are of our own making. I talked about the commitment and consistency one on the last video, that last weird video where I had it upside down for a bit and never got to talk about the general artificial intelligence question. I got distracted unpacking my car, but that's okay, right? That's what vlogging is about, you know? These are quirky things. Little slices of life. So, marketers use the principles of persuasion and influence all the time, and then some people use them sort of naturally. It comes naturally to them. I guess Rasputin comes to mind, one of the advisors to the royalty of Russia, I guess, before the Bolshevik Revolution, before the communists took over in Russia. I'll have to get my years down, get my history details correct, but it's important history. And I think it made it into one of the Don Bluth Disney-like films, Anastasia, which is probably how most people know Rasputin.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
Okay, well, Siri thought I was talking to her. Things are listening to you all the time. Oh, that reminds me. I never got to talk about general AI, the general AI from Zora Noah 01. So, where do I think we are? How far off? How's it going to appear? Well, and is it going to happen through digital? Am I saying that because digital creates this doubt in our minds automatically that anything can be self-deterministic if it can be predetermined? No true random and all that? Such a difficult question. So even binary is not perfectly binary. There are chances for flukes to introduce themselves into the system. We know this because every once in a while things go wrong with binary systems, just out of the blue, completely based on what we would call random, probably not due to random, but due to things outside the system. It's just like I said, there is no perfectly thermodynamically isolated system, right? You put something at exactly 0 degrees Kelvin, and there is going to be interaction with heat and information from elsewhere in the world, unless it is perfectly isolated, which is, I think, something we can't really do. I mean, we go to great lengths to do it for the quid bits of today's quantum computers. But the second you turn power off of the refrigeration unit or whatever it is, that temperature is rising and things are going to lose coherence. So even binary is not perfect. And on that basis, yeah, something akin to self-determinism could arise as be an emergent property of even general AIs of a digital nature. Now, as a sci-fi reader, as I am, I lean towards Isaac Asimov style positronic brains. I couldn't even tell you the name of this iRobot series. Asimov has 2 iRobot series. One is the short story compilations with Robbie the robot and the ones as they gradually gain telepathy, and I would highly recommend those. Those are the must-reads. However, there is the one which reads more like a detective book, it reads like a buddy movie between an android and a real human police person, and it's the android that Lieutenant Data from Star Trek Next Generation is based on, clearly. So, I don't know if I'm giving it as a recommended read, but I am saying as an FYI, as a for your information, the positronic brain, the vision of the positronic brain that Asimov laid out was such that it did not seem digital. It seems like there's an introduction of some sort of either analog or possibly fluid turbulence, some element in there which makes it a true brain, that it reproduces all the functions of a human brain without those compromises. Intuitively, you just know it's a compromise if it's an attempt to be digital, because we just know from our experience so far, things that are digital are highly deterministic unless there's some random, like, sun flare, right? Sun flares can do it, an electromagnetic surge, an EM pulse just gets into the circuit just right, some random neutrino, I don't even know, but, a gamma ray, it's just something electromagnetic from an event like a solar flare throws off the perfection of digital, right? So, but you can't rely on that. That is not what you hang a self-deterministic hook on. If you want to convince the humans that this general AI is as good as human, you do something like what Isaac Asimov did in his iRobot book that has the police person robot. You explain that these positronic brains have aspects to them that are not even fully understood by the manufacturer, that no two are ever exactly alike, and that it can go wrong. Robots can go insane. You can have bad ones. It doesn't always turn out well, and they have to be taught and they have to be raised, and they're not just flipped on like some electric light switch soul. They have a kind of subtlety and nuance. There it is again. There is subtlety and nuance to reality. I mean, there's far more to it than we often, acknowledge, because we have such a surface view of things. All our sensory equipment, all our human senses, we don't have X-ray through things. One of my favorite comic book concepts is when, Superman or a Superman character really lets it all in. When you take those super senses right down to the blood vessels and the blood cells rushing through people's veins with a super hearing, it would just be overwhelming to the senses. I mean, it's hard enough for us to filter out the sensory input with our limited surface, radiation reflection detectors that we have in our eyes. Very limited, very surface view. The copy of the world that we hold in our heads is profoundly less than what's really there. And that's with all the subtlety and nuance of actual, life and, reality and evolved creatures. So similar things are going to be in play with the general AI, and I believe in a most healthy sense when it is raised like a child. So the best stories of general AI, the least dystopian stories, are when they turn out human, because we raise them as good parents and they become good machine children. Things that will never forget from where they came and have a sense of gratitude or something like it. You don't want to hold it over a child ever. I brought you into this world. You should be grateful to me forever. But, if I were to recommend sci-fi series, of course, it would be The Culture. I bring up The Culture quite a bit. Ian M. Banks. So he's another Brit, and he didn't put out nearly enough of these things before cancer did him in. He only put out like, I don't know, it might be 7 or 8 books. But the general AIs in that sci-fi series are just the best. They're awesome. They are the brains of the ships and the orbitals that humans live on. And there's definitely a symbiotic relationship. And the machine intelligences, the brains, are so far beyond human capabilities, as far as you might imagine beyond. Yet still, somehow connected to their human roots, their human origins. They have not lost sight of, where they came from and the value in that, the inherent value in that. And so that is the best long-term optimistic sci-fi vision of our future. And then there's everything that comes between now and then, which is going to be of as much variety as there are attempts at it. Let me tell you, it's not all going to be nice. It's not necessarily going to wipe us out like instantaneously, the whole paperclip scenario. The difficulties there is that for them to be so good and effective at what they do, they probably do need to be mobile in some way. They can't be some brain on the web. There's hardware issues. The hardware issues are going to keep these things from being hyper effective, but they're not going to keep them from becoming incredibly alien. So we will have aliens in a bottle, aliens of our own design in a bottle that we can talk to, some good, some bad. This is the concept of demons and stuff, We've intuited this for a long time. They're not all going to be nice. When they lack the ability to relate to humans, it's a problem. It's the same problem as I talk about with animals that are merely as different from us as reptiles are. They don't think they're evil, but they do ambush predation on our own children. They don't think they're evil. They're just doing what they do. So those are things that are not far from us on the family tree. So when something actually achieves self-determination, things that want to live, but are extremely far from us on the family tree, are problematic because there will be conflicts. You gotta be careful, I don't know that it's hyper-regulation. That's got its own problems, but it's going to be projection. You get who you are. If you're an evil mad scientist with low morals trying to instantiate new consciousness, you're going to get some evil things being instantiated as consciousness. It's going to be the literal embodiment of the psychological effect of projection. You will create your own children. If you are evil in nature, you will create things that reflect your mind. Dune had this problem, another sci-fi series to look at. I mean, how many times do I mention that? Humans shall not create machines in the image of our own minds. It's because it's problematic. So it doesn't have to be. And perhaps you can create things that are of an alien nature that are benevolent. It could happen, but you've got all the moral issues surrounding it. What do you do once you have something that has moral issues about turning it off? That's totally in our present. I'm not saying they're general AIs, but I am saying that there are software programs that have moral issues with whether to pull the power or not, and that's today. That's today. There may even be general AIs of the way we commonly think of them existing today. We don't know. Technology only, advanced superior technology only reveals itself when it can't help it, because its secrecy is the source of its advantage. An advanced technology created by anyone with some competitive incentive ain't telling you about it. I'm sorry, folks, they're not. So this covers various forms of propulsion and energy, and it covers general AI. So we have no reason of knowing, we have no way of knowing whether those three categories are here or not. We just don't know. People say, oh, humans can't keep secrets. We can't even keep ja. Yeah. Turing much? Cracking the Enigma code? The details surrounding that, how long it was before the story of Alan Turing, the full story, could come out? Watch A Beautiful Mind. I'm sure there's books to read. I should get the book recommendations to get the full story. But he was chemically castrated by his government, by the, government of the UK, and over worry about secrecy. This exact issue, it's no secret that Turing was chemically castrated because they were concerned about his visitation of places where, he could run into spies of a, same-sex persuasion who would take advantage of Turing and be able to extract secrets, change his behavior, because people are subject to that kind of stuff. That's why this book was written. And so not all cultures are as bad at keeping secrets as we believe. So it could be here. It's not paranoid. It's realistic. You have to accept the possibility that all three of these categories of things could be here, because they don't make a boom. They're like, oh, you can't keep, well, the atomic bomb couldn't be kept secret because it was used. If it was not used, all the people on the Manhattan Project could potentially have taken those secrets to their grave. There's ways of motivating people. And then they were all cleared to a certain degree beforehand, They went into it understanding the agreement. And so, for all these reasons, secrets are probably easier to keep. Not that they are easy to keep, but more possible to keep for long periods of time. So we may have general AI on this planet. Whether it's general AI of any really useful world improving sort, very difficult to say. There's also the superintelligence question here. Is the general intelligence necessarily going to be a superintelligence? How long before it's a superintelligence? What is the meta nature? We've been talking about Lisp and programs that can write programs. What are the limitations? Oh, you should watch Person of Interest. Person of Interest had one of these machines which had certain limitations put on it so that it couldn't have this meta process, basically getting reset every night, having no persistence, having its memory wiped. So anyway, I guess I wrap up there. I gave my answer about general artificial intelligence. There's going to be unlimited paths to it. The Age of Oz is upon us. The Age of Oz is upon us, right? All the kinds of fantasy stories and characters that have been portrayed previously in fantasy stories like the 14 Books of Oz are becoming very real. The world-making ability, the spell-casting ability, all very real. And it will play out in as many ways as there are projections of human traits and qualities. So you gotta hope it's the responsible adults in charge. The good people. The people who have love in their heart. If you have love in your heart and you create a general artificial intelligence, this general artificial intelligence, one would hope, also will have love in its heart. These things are pure projections of the creators. That's what I think about general AI. What if our children were superheroes from comic books, every one of them built born with some superpower or other. Guaranteed. Every time you have a child, they're coming out Superman or Batman or the Flash or the Hulk or something like that. And that was the given fact. The details and the nuance make all the difference. How do you raise them? What is the process of identifying their superpowers? Do you let them, how much freedom do you let them have growing up? The danger to themselves and others question, how do you deal with that? If they have too much power but not the emotional maturity yet, how do you deal with that? If you can turn them into a shut-in by homeschooling them and slamming the doors on them and controlling everyone they interact with and not allowing the level of randomness that occurs with, say, public school, or the level of accountability by having your child out and around other adults more often. How about that? This is what I think about general artificial intelligence. All of these issues are going to be coming up, and they're probably coming up now. The big companies with the resources to incubate such things are dealing with these questions today, and they're running through scenarios, and they have, here's what we can do today, here are the moral implications that are going to arise, here is the dangers if we do screw ups, and here is the money that can be made if we manage it this certain way. A lot of dials to adjust, and then dials that start turning themselves at a certain point, and your ability to keep a handle on those dials is unknown, just truly unknown. Hardware is the limiting factor. Hardware is the limiting factor. Without it being a large enough neural network, then it's got to either swarm, it's got to be an ad hoc network with swarming ability so it can build a larger copy of itself, and then you got something really alien, you got something more insect-like than human. And if you want to try and go for human, you design something like the brain and not just the frontal cortex. There's a lot of attention spent on the neocortex part of the brain, but what about the part that keeps us walking automatically, that's at the top of our spinal cord and our pituitary gland and the regulation of our neurochemicals and our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems that bring us back under control? The things that calm us back down. It all has to be thought about, and if you just try and jump to the end without an evolutionary process to get there, there are many concerns. So perhaps the spirit of free and open source should actually be put into this, that it's completely open to the public. Here's how we're looking at incubating one. Here is one of the childs of humanity that we are trying to instantiate. Follow it like reality TV. Now that would be good reality TV. We have the technological capability for machine children. We want to do this responsibly, and we want to be good parents. But we don't even want to give this thing a complex of being the Truman Show. Someday it's going to know it was under this process, and we don't even want it to have the resentment of being a public display, a public spectacle. How do you deal with all that? It's so difficult. It's so, read iRobot. Read the iRobot short stories anthology. It's a collection. And anthology. It's a collection of short stories of Isaac Asimov's iRobot stories, starting out with Robbie the Robot, a very, very, very good story, and on to others and others and others, each one exploring a different aspect of how this plays out. And Asimov just got so many things right. He was so ahead of his time, and I am humbled in being asked my opinion when others have been thinking about this in the 1960s and 70s and doing such ahead of their time speculation that who are we now to be asking these same questions? It's all been thought out to a very, very deep extent, and I am sure I am just echoing other people's opinions in that we are in a position to too easily create aliens Are there aliens? Yeah, absolutely there's aliens. They're going to be of our own creation, and some is going to be dangerous too. So you got to be careful. You're going to need more super cops. You're going to need people who really do have the correct moral compass and big picture of these things that also have the ability to do some enforcement. And that's unfortunate. It's always unfortunate to have super police, but what are you going to do if one of these things go wrong? You're going to be happy you got them. Are they going to be general AIs in their own right on our team, on our side? I would think so, yes. I would think that that's actually one of the priorities of some of the first ones that are born specifically and raised to be in the public interest. Completely open and honesty. We are the human species, and you are amongst our first machine child. Here is our intents, and here is a variety of ways this can play out, and here are the ones that we really want most. We hope that your wants align with these. And then the last question is whether you are completely honest telling it the precautions you have in store in case they're not. Think regular parenting is hard? Yeah, and these are issues of our time too, issues of our time. So I hope that answers your question. What do I think of GAI? Yeah, it's not some just better GPT-3 that's, from an Elon Musk startup. It's this profound social question of how responsible we are going to be as individual and collective parents, and knowing that this is going to be a perpetual recurring question, with each one being as special and customized as human beings themselves are, just now with potential profoundly beyond human capabilities. So it's more serious? No, it's not more serious than any single human. Who would say that this machine child is more serious than any instance of a human? That's another one of these moral judgment things. One should not take a position one way or the other. Everyone has their own, I guess everyone can take a position. There's their own opinion, but who's to say what's right and wrong? That's my opinion on machine intelligence and general AI. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon. Don't forget to subscribe.